I never thought my college experience would begin with sunscreen, of all things, but here we are. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I missed, all the warning signs I stupidly ignored because I was too excited about starting my freshman year at Berkeley to pay attention to anything that might dampen my enthusiasm. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, from that sweltering August day when I first met Cassandra. Move-in day was chaotic, exactly as everyone had warned me it would be. Parents everywhere, crying mothers, nervous freshmen dragging suitcases up narrow staircases, the smell of fresh paint and cleaning supplies filling the dorms. I was assigned to Unit 2, a relatively newer dorm on the south side of campus, and when I finally found my room on the third floor, the door was already propped open. That's when I first saw her. Cassandra was beautiful in that effortless way that some people just are. Long, dark hair that fell in perfect waves down her back, olive skin that seemed to glow even under the harsh fluorescent lighting, and these striking green eyes that seemed to look right through you. She was unpacking what seemed like an entire pharmacy onto her side of the room, bottles and jars of all shapes and sizes, labels written in her neat, slanted handwriting. "Hi," I said, probably too enthusiastically. "I'm Morgan. Looks like we're roommates." She turned and gave me this smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Cassandra, nice to meet you." Her voice was smooth, cultured, with just a hint of an accent I couldn't place. "Sorry about the mess. I'm just organizing my skincare and wellness products." I glanced at the collection. There had to be at least 50 different containers. Wow, that's quite a collection. "I make them myself," she said, and there was definite pride in her voice. "All natural, all organic. I don't trust commercial products. Do you know what they put in those things? Parabens, sulfates, synthetic fragrances, endocrine disruptors. I've been making my own cosmetics and health products since I was 14. "That's really cool," I said, and I meant it. She seemed sophisticated and worldly in a way I definitely wasn't. I'd grown up in a small town in Oregon, daughter of 2 high school teachers, and the most exotic thing in my bathroom was a face mask from Target. Next few days were a whirlwind of orientation activities, campus tour, department meet and greets, and those awkward icebreaker games that somehow managed to be both boring and mortifying at the same time. Cassandra and I fell into an easy enough rhythm. She was neat, quiet, and kept to herself mostly, which was fine by me since I was trying to meet as many people as possible. But I noticed things. I noticed that she never ate in the dining hall, always claiming she had food sensitivities and had to prepare her own meals. I noticed that she took her own vitamins and supplements, at least a dozen different pills every morning and evening, all from unlabeled bottles. I noticed that she was obsessive about her skincare routine, spending at least an hour every morning and night applying various concoctions to her face and body. And I noticed that she was always trying to get me to use her products. "Your skin looks dehydrated," she'd say, appearing beside me as I got ready for class. "You should try my facial serum. It has hyaluronic acid, vitamin C, and rosehip oil." "Your hair is getting damaged from the water here," she'd mention casually. "The mineral content is too high. Use my apple cider vinegar rinse." "You're going to get sun damage," she'd warn. "The UV index is really high today. You need to wear my sunscreen." At first, I was polite but firm in my refusals. I had my own products, I told her, and they worked fine for me. But Cassandra was persistent in a way that was hard to say no to. She wasn't pushy exactly, just constant, a drip of water that slowly wore down stone. The first time I gave in was the day of the big freshman orientation picnic. It was late August, and the California sun was brutal, beating down on the rec field where they'd set up tables and volleyball nets and various activities designed to help us bond with our fellow freshmen. I'd forgotten to buy sunscreen and was going to skip it, but Cassandra insisted. "Don't be ridiculous," she said, already unscrewing the lid of a large mason jar filled with white cream. "You'll burn to a crisp out there. Just use mine. I made it fresh last week. It's coconut oil based with zinc oxide, shea butter, and a few essential oils. SPF 30, completely natural, and it actually works unlike most natural sunscreens." I hesitated, but what she was saying made sense, and honestly, I felt a little guilty about always refusing her offers when she was just trying to be helpful. "Okay," I said, "thanks." She beamed at me, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her, and I felt a little warm glow of roommate bonding. Maybe we were going to be friends after all. "Here, let me help you," she said, dipping her fingers into the jar. "You have to make sure to get good coverage." Before I could protest, she was slathering the cream across my face, her fingers cool and surprisingly gentle. It smelled nice, like coconut and lavender, and felt smooth on my skin. "Make sure you reapply every 2 hours," she instructed. "Natural sunscreens need more frequent application than chemical ones." The picnic was actually fun. I played volleyball, ate too many hot dogs, and met a bunch of people from my dorm. A guy named Jake from down the hall seemed particularly interested in talking to me, and I felt that little flutter of possibility. College was going to be everything I'd hoped. I reapplied Cassandra's sunscreen twice during the afternoon, just as she'd instructed, and when I got back to the dorm that evening, my skin looked fine, not even a hint of pink. I felt vindicated in finally accepting her help. "See," Cassandra said when I thanked her, "I told you it works. You can use it anytime you want." After that, it became easier to say yes. She gave me a small jar of her facial moisturizer when I complained about dry skin from the air conditioning. She made me a special tea blend when I mentioned having trouble sleeping. She offered me her shampoo when I ran out of mine before I could get to the store. Each time the products seemed to work well, my skin did feel more hydrated, I did sleep better, my hair felt soft and shiny. But then things started to get weird. It began about 3 weeks into the semester. I woke up one morning with a pounding headache and a wave of nausea that sent me running to our shared bathroom. I barely made it to the toilet before I threw up everything I'd eaten the night before. "Are you okay?" Cassandra asked through the door, her voice full of concern. "I think I have food poisoning," I groaned. "Something from the dining hall maybe." "Poor thing, let me make you some ginger tea. It'll help settle your stomach." I was too miserable to argue. She brought me the tea, still steaming in one of her ceramic mugs. It tasted sharp and earthy, but I drank it all because she stood there watching with such concern that it would have seemed rude not to. The nausea faded within an hour, and I felt well enough to go to my afternoon classes. Cassandra's tea had worked. But then it happened again 3 days later, and then again the following week. Each time I'd wake up violently ill, and each time Cassandra's tea would make me feel better. I went to the student health center after the 3rd episode, but they couldn't find anything wrong with me. The doctor suggested stress and gave me a pamphlet about managing anxiety in college. "Maybe you should stop eating at the dining hall," Cassandra suggested. "I keep telling you, you probably have food sensitivities you don't know about. The food there is full of preservatives and additives." She started making meals for both of us in our room. We weren't technically supposed to have a hot plate, but she had a small one hidden in her closet. She'd prepare these elaborate, healthy meals with ingredients she got from the farmer's market, and I have to admit, they were delicious, better than anything in the dining hall. The mysterious illness stopped after I started eating her food exclusively. Around the same time, other things started happening. Small things, weird things, that I couldn't quite explain, but that left me with a creeping sense of unease. My belongings started moving. I'd leave my keys on my desk and find them on my bed. I'd put my phone on the charger on my nightstand and discover it across the room on my desk. My textbooks would shift positions. At first, I thought I was just being forgetful, stressed from adjusting to college life, but it kept happening, too frequently to be my imagination. "Have you been moving my stuff?" I asked Cassandra one evening, trying to sound casual and not accusatory. She looked up from her textbook, her expression perfectly innocent. "What? No, of course not. Why would I move your things?" "I don't know, things keep ending up in different places than where I left them." "You're probably just forgetting where you put things," she said with a sympathetic smile. "It happens to me all the time. College is stressful." But I knew I wasn't forgetting. I started paying closer attention, making mental notes of exactly where I placed things. And still, they'd move. Not every day, but often enough that I started to feel like I was going crazy. Then there was the thing with Jake. Remember Jake from the orientation picnic? We'd been flirting, texting, gradually working up to what I thought would be a first date. But suddenly he stopped responding to my messages. When I saw him in the hall, he'd barely look at me, giving me curt nods before hurrying away. I finally cornered him at a dorm study session. "Did I do something wrong?" I asked him directly. He looked uncomfortable, glancing around like he wanted to escape. "Look, Morgan, you seem nice, but I'm not really interested in drama." "Drama? What drama?" "Your roommate told me about your situation. I'm just not in a place to deal with that right now." "My situation? What situation?" But he was already walking away, and I was left standing there feeling confused and humiliated. When I confronted Cassandra, she seemed genuinely baffled. "I have no idea what he's talking about. I barely know the guy. I think I said hi to him once in the elevator." I wanted to believe her. She was my roommate, and things had been going so well between us. But doubt had planted itself in my mind, a seed that would only grow larger. The next incident was harder to dismiss. I came back from class one afternoon to find Cassandra sitting on her bed, crying, real tears streaming down her face, her eyes red and swollen. "What's wrong?" I asked, immediately concerned. "I'm so sorry, Morgan," she sobbed. "I didn't know how to tell you." My heart started racing. "Tell me what?" "That guy you've been seeing, Marcus, the one from your chemistry study group. I saw him at a party last night. He was all over some other girl. I thought you should know." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Marcus and I had been on 2 dates, and while it wasn't serious yet, I really liked him. Are you sure it was him? I'm positive. I'm so sorry. I debated whether to tell you, but I'd want to know if I were in your position. I was devastated. I texted Marcus immediately, and when he denied being at any party the previous night, sent me a screenshot of him having dinner with his parents who'd come to visit. I felt a mix of relief and confusion. Maybe Cassandra made a mistake, Marcus said when I explained, mistook someone else for me. But when I mentioned it to Cassandra, she doubled down. I know what I saw, Morgan. I'm not blind. If he's denying it, that just proves he's a liar. I'm trying to look out for you. I didn't know what to believe. Marcus seemed sincere, but why would Cassandra lie? What would she have to gain? Things deteriorated quickly after that. Marcus and I broke up, not because of the party incident, but because the trust was damaged. I kept having bouts of mysterious illness that only Cassandra's remedies could cure. More people seemed to be avoiding me, though I couldn't figure out why. My grades started slipping because I was tired all the time despite sleeping 9 or 10 hours a night. You're depressed, Cassandra diagnosed one evening. After I broke down crying over a C on a paper I thought I'd done well on. I can see the signs. You should go to counseling. I'm not depressed, I insisted, but even as I said it, I wondered if she was right. I felt awful all the time. Tired, nauseous, foggy-headed, anxious. Maybe I was depressed. At least try my supplements, she urged. I've been taking them for years and they really help with mood regulation. All natural herbs and vitamins, much better than antidepressants. I was desperate enough to agree. She gave me a pill organizer with 7 compartments, one for each day of the week, each filled with an assortment of pills and capsules in different colors and sizes. Take them with breakfast, she instructed. Every day, don't skip. They work best with consistent use. I took them religiously, every morning, washing them down with the smoothies Cassandra had started making for us. She said they were packed with nutrients, superfoods that would help restore my energy and health. I wish I could say I noticed improvement, but I didn't. If anything, I felt worse. The brain fog got heavier. I started having trouble remembering things, conversations I'd apparently had but couldn't recall, places I'd supposedly been but had no memory of visiting. You told me you were going to drop your economics class, Cassandra said one morning. I never said that. I like that class. Yes, you did. Last night, we had a whole conversation about it. You said the professor didn't like you and you were going to fail anyway. But I had no memory of this conversation, none at all. It was October midterm season, and I was barely holding it together. I'd lost weight because I was nauseous so often. I had dark circles under my eyes despite sleeping constantly. My friendships were suffering because I kept forgetting plans or apparently saying weird things I didn't remember saying. The only constant, the only person who seemed to care and understand, was Cassandra. She was always there with a remedy, a supplement, a tea, a word of comfort. She studied with me, quizzed me for exams, helped me with my papers. She was becoming less of a roommate and more of a caretaker, and some part of me recognized that this wasn't healthy, but I felt too awful and too confused to do anything about it. Then came the incident that changed everything. It was a Friday night, and there was a big party at one of the frat houses. I hadn't been planning to go, feeling too exhausted and antisocial, but Cassandra insisted. You need to get out, she said. You've been cooped up in this room too much. It's not healthy. Come on, it'll be fun. We'll go together. She seemed so excited about it, so genuinely enthusiastic about spending time together, that I agreed. I put on a dress, let her do my makeup with her homemade cosmetics, and we walked to the party together. The party was loud, crowded, overwhelming. I had one beer, nursed it slowly, and mostly stood in a corner watching everyone else have fun. Cassandra kept disappearing and reappearing, bringing me drinks. It's just punch, she said the third time. Non-alcoholic. I know you're not feeling well, so I made sure to get you something without alcohol. I drank it because I was thirsty, and because she'd been so thoughtful to think of me. That's the last thing I clearly remember. Everything after that is fragments, disconnected pieces that don't quite fit together. Dancing maybe, loud music, people laughing, someone's hands on my waist. Cassandra's face close to mine, her eyes intense and strange. Being outside, the cool night air on my face, stumbling, falling. I woke up in the student health center, with no idea how I got there. A nurse with kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a bun was checking my vitals. You're awake, she said with relief. How are you feeling? What happened? My mouth was dry, my head pounding, my whole body aching. You were brought in early this morning. A student found you unconscious outside your dorm. You were unresponsive, your blood pressure was dangerously low, and you were hypothermic. I don't remember, I whispered, and tears started sliding down my face. I don't remember anything. They kept me for observation, ran tests, asked questions I couldn't answer. When the results came back, the doctor, a woman in her 40s with a serious expression, sat down beside my bed. Morgan, your blood work showed several concerning substances in your system. We found traces of benzodiazepines, which you don't have a prescription for, as well as some compounds we're still trying to identify. Did you take any drugs at the party? No, I said immediately. I had one beer and some punch, that's all. Someone may have put something in your drink, she said gently. We've contacted the campus police. They'll want to talk to you. I felt numb, drugged. Someone had drugged me, but who and why? The campus police detective, a woman named Officer Reeves, was professional and thorough. She asked about the party, who I'd been with, what I'd consumed, whether I'd noticed anyone acting suspicious. My roommate was with me, I said. Cassandra, she brought me drinks, but she was just being nice. She was taking care of me. Officer Reeves wrote something in her notebook. We'll need to speak with her as well, get her statement about the evening. I was released that afternoon with instructions to rest and follow up with my primary care doctor. Cassandra picked me up, full of concern and sympathy. I've been so worried, she said, hugging me tightly. I looked everywhere for you at the party. One minute you were there, the next you were gone. I thought you'd just gone back to the dorm, but when you never came home, I didn't know what to think. Someone drugged me, I said, watching her face for a reaction. Her eyes widened with what looked like genuine shock and horror. Oh my God, Morgan, that's terrible. Did anything happen to you? They don't think so. Someone found me outside the dorm before anything could happen. Thank God, she breathed. Do they know who did it? No. She drove me back to the dorm, helped me into bed, made me tea, always with the tea. I drank it because my head hurt and my stomach was still queasy, and I needed something to make me feel better. I slept for 14 hours straight. When I woke up, it was Sunday afternoon. Cassandra was at her desk, studying classical music playing softly from her laptop speakers. Everything felt surreal, like I was watching my life from outside my body. Feeling better, she asked without turning around. Not really. Give it time. Trauma like that takes a while to process. Something about her tone bothered me, but I couldn't put my finger on what. She sounded sympathetic, but there was something underneath, something that felt almost like satisfaction. Over the next few days, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. The incident at the party had shaken something loose in my brain, made me start questioning things I'd been accepting without thought. Why was I sick so often, and why did only Cassandra's remedies help? Why did Cassandra always know where my things were when I lost them? Why had so many of my potential friendships and relationships fallen apart? Why did I feel worse instead of better despite all of Cassandra's help? I started paying attention, really paying attention, in a way I hadn't before, and I started noticing things. I noticed that Cassandra watched me constantly, her eyes following my movements whenever we were in the room together. I noticed that she was always touching my things when she thought I wasn't looking, picking up my phone, flipping through my notebooks, reading my computer screen over my shoulder. I noticed that I only felt sick after eating food she'd prepared or drinking beverages she'd given me. I started an experiment. On Wednesday, I pretended to take the supplements she gave me every morning, hiding them under my tongue instead and spitting them out when she left the room. I poured the smoothie she made me down the sink. I bought a sandwich from the campus cafe for lunch instead of eating the meal she'd packed for me. By Thursday, I felt better than I had in weeks. My head was clearer, my stomach settled, my energy returning. By Friday, I was certain Cassandra was poisoning me. The realization was so enormous, so horrifying that I almost couldn't process it. My roommate, the girl I'd been living with for 2 months, the person I'd started to trust and depend on, had been deliberately making me sick. But why? What could she possibly have to gain? I needed proof before I could go to anyone with this. If I accused her without evidence, she'd deny it, and I'd look crazy. Crazier than I already looked after the drug incident. I started documenting everything. I took photos of the supplements she gave me. I saved the smoothies she made, pouring them into empty bottles I hid in my backpack. I started sleeping with my phone tucked under my pillow, using it to record our room at night. The video I captured on the third night made my blood run cold. At 2:47 a.m., the recording showed Cassandra getting out of bed. She moved quietly across the room to where my backpack hung on the back of my desk chair. She went through it methodically, looking at each item, reading my notebooks, scrolling through my planner. Then she opened the jar of moisturizer on my desk, the one I'd bought for myself at Target, and added something to it from a small bottle she pulled from her pocket. She stirred it in carefully, making sure it was fully mixed, then put the jar back exactly where it had been. She did the same thing with my shampoo bottle in the shower caddy. And she came to stand beside my bed, just stood there, looking down at me sleeping for a full 5 minutes. The expression on her face in the dim light from the street lamp outside our window was serene, almost loving, but there was something predatory in it too, something that made me feel violated just watching the recording. Finally, she went back to her own bed and went to sleep as if nothing had happened. I watched the video 3 times, my hands shaking, bile rising in my throat. I had proof, clear, undeniable proof that Cassandra was tampering with my belongings, putting substances in my personal care products. But I still didn't understand why. I needed to know why before I went to the authorities. I needed to understand what I was dealing with. I decided to confront her, but carefully, in a public place where she couldn't hurt me. "Hey," I said casually on Saturday morning, "want to grab lunch at the dining hall? I'm kind of craving their pasta bar." She looked surprised. I'd been avoiding the dining hall for weeks on her advice. "Are you sure? You know how the food there makes you feel?" "I'm feeling a lot better lately," I said. "I think whatever was bothering me has passed." Something flickered across her face, too quick for me to read. "Okay," she said slowly. "Sure, let's go." The dining hall was crowded with students recovering from Friday night parties, hungover and loud. We got our food and found a table in the corner. I'd gotten a salad from the salad bar, ingredients I'd watched them prepare, nothing that could have been tampered with. I watched Cassandra eat her meal, both of us making small talk about classes and assignments, and tried to work up the courage to ask her what I needed to ask her. Finally, I just said it. "Why are you poisoning me?" She froze, fork halfway to her mouth, her eyes locking onto mine. For a long moment, she didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even seem to breathe. Then she put down her fork carefully and smiled. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do. The supplements you give me, the smoothies, the tea. You've been putting something in them to make me sick. And at the party, you drugged me. It wasn't some random person. It was you." "Morgan, you're being paranoid. This is exactly what I've been worried about. You're not well. You need help. I have video of you putting something in my moisturizer and my shampoo at 2 a.m. while I was sleeping." Her smile didn't waver, but her eyes went hard. "You're recording our room. That's a violation of my privacy. That's probably illegal." "Not as illegal as poisoning your roommate." We stared at each other across the table, the noise of the dining hall fading into the background. This was it, the moment of truth, and I didn't know what she would do. "You can't prove anything," she said finally, her voice low. "Those supplements are just vitamins and herbs. The things I put in your products are essential oils and natural additives. None of it is illegal. And even if you show anyone that video, all it proves is that I was trying to help you by adding beneficial ingredients to your inferior commercial products." "What about the drugs at the party?" "What drugs? You drank too much and passed out. It happens to freshmen all the time. There's no evidence I gave you anything." She was right, and we both knew it. The substances in my blood work were generic enough that they could have come from anywhere, from anyone. And she'd been so careful, so meticulous, that anything I accused her of could be explained away as helpful intent or my own paranoid misinterpretation. "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Just tell me why. What did I ever do to you?" For a moment, I thought she wouldn't answer. Then she leaned forward, her eyes glittering with something that looked almost like excitement. "Do you know what it's like to be invisible?" she asked. "To be so completely unremarkable that people look right through you. That was me my whole life. Average grades, average looks, average everything. No matter what I did, I couldn't make anyone see me, really see me. So you decided to poison me. That doesn't make any sense." "You don't understand. I discovered that I had a gift for chemistry, for understanding how compounds interact with the human body. I started experimenting with natural substances, learning what they could do. And I found that I could make people need me. If I made them sick just a little bit and then made them better, they'd be grateful. They'd depend on me. They'd finally pay attention to me." My stomach turned. "You've done this before, to other people." She shrugged a few times. "My last roommate had to withdraw for medical reasons. So sad, we'd become so close." "You're insane." "I'm brilliant," she corrected, "and you can't do anything about it. If you report me, I'll just say you're mentally unstable, which honestly, after everything that's happened to you this semester, people will believe. The mysterious illnesses, the paranoia, the memory problems, the incident at the party. You're the perfect victim because you've already lost all credibility." She was right again, and the realization made me want to scream. She'd been so careful, so systematic in destroying my reliability as a witness. No one would believe me over her. "I'm moving out," I said. "I'm requesting a room change." "Go ahead," she said pleasantly, but I'll still see you around campus, and you'll never know when I might decide to add something to your coffee at the library, or your drink at a party, or any of the 1,000 things you consume without thinking every single day. You'll spend the rest of your college career looking over your shoulder, wondering if today's the day I decide to make you sick again. Is that really how you want to live? I stood up, my legs shaking. Stay away from me. Or what? She smiled, that same serene, loving smile from the video. What are you going to do, Morgan? I walked away without answering because I didn't have an answer. She was right about all of it. I was trapped. I went to the housing office that afternoon and requested an emergency room change. I told them my roommate and I weren't compatible, that I felt unsafe, but I couldn't give them specifics without sounding unhinged. They said they'd see what they could do, but there were no guarantees and it might take several weeks. I couldn't stay in that room for several more weeks. I started sleeping on friends' couches, making excuses about why I couldn't sleep in my own dorm. I stopped eating or drinking anything I hadn't personally purchased and watched being prepared. I became hypervigilant, paranoid, exactly the way Cassandra had said I would. And she was always there, always watching, always smiling that terrible smile. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't prove what she'd done to me. I couldn't protect myself from what she might do in the future. I couldn't even explain the situation to anyone without sounding crazy. I was completely and utterly fucked. But then something happened that I didn't expect, something that changed everything. I got a message on Facebook from a girl I didn't know. Her name was Rachel, and her profile said she went to UCLA. I know this is going to sound weird, the message said, but do you have a roommate named Cassandra Chen? Dark hair, green eyes, really into natural health products. My heart started racing. Yes, why? She was my roommate last year. I saw her tagged in one of your photos. I need to talk to you. It's important. Can we video chat? We set up a call for that evening. I went to the library, found a private study room, and called her at exactly the time we'd agreed. Rachel appeared on my screen, a petite girl with short blonde hair and anxious eyes. Hi, she said. Thanks for calling me. I know this is strange. You said you were Cassandra's roommate. Yeah, at UCLA, freshman year. I withdrew second semester for medical reasons, officially. My blood ran cold. What really happened? The same thing that I'm guessing is happening to you. She poisoned me, made me sick, then played the hero by nursing me back to health with her remedies. Except I wasn't getting better, I was getting worse. I ended up in the hospital 3 times before I finally figured out what she was doing. Oh my God. I tried to report her, but I couldn't prove anything. She was so careful. Everything she gave me was technically legal, natural substances that could be explained as helpful supplements. And she'd spent months making me look unstable, unreliable. No one believed me. That's exactly what she's doing to me, I whispered. I know, that's why I had to contact you when I saw you were living with her. She transferred to Berkeley after I withdrew. I should have warned them, but I couldn't prove anything, and I was just so glad to be rid of her that I didn't want to think about it anymore. But then I felt guilty, knowing she was probably doing it to someone else. Do you have any evidence, anything at all that we could use? Some medical records showing the weird substances in my blood work, a journal I kept where I documented every time I got sick and what I'd consumed, some photos of her supplements and products, but none of it was enough on its own. The lawyer my parents consulted said we couldn't build a case. An idea started forming in my mind. What if we combined our evidence, your records and mine together? Would that be enough to show a pattern? Rachel bit her lip. Maybe, but we'd need more than just the two of us. We'd need to show that this is what she does consistently to multiple people. She told me there were others, other roommates who had to withdraw for medical reasons. We need to find them, Rachel said. If we can get even 1 or 2 more people to come forward, we might have enough to build a real case. That night we started our investigation. Rachel had kept screenshots of some of Cassandra's social media before blocking her, and we used those to trace backward through her tagged photos and posts. We found her high school, her previous addresses, other schools she'd attended. And we found more victims. A girl named Amy who'd been Cassandra's roommate at a summer program the year before college. She'd ended up in the ER with what doctors thought was an allergic reaction, but couldn't identify the allergen. A girl named Sophie who'd been Cassandra's roommate their senior year of high school when Cassandra had briefly attended boarding school. Sophie had developed mysterious seizures that stopped as soon as she graduated and moved out. A girl named Priya who'd been Cassandra's lab partner in a chemistry class in high school. She'd gotten so sick she had to drop the class, just as they were competing for the same scholarship. Pattern emerged. Cassandra targeted people who were close to her, people who trusted her, and she made them sick. Sometimes it seemed to be about control and attention. Sometimes it seemed to be about removing competition. Always, she was careful enough to avoid detection. We created a shared document, all of us contributing our evidence, our medical records, our testimonies. We had dates, patterns, similar substances showing up in blood work, matching descriptions of Cassandra's behavior and methods. It still wasn't enough for a criminal case. The lawyers we consulted all said the same thing. The evidence was circumstantial, the substances were legal, and Cassandra had plausible deniability for everything. But it was enough for the university. We presented our case to the dean of students, all 5 of us together, via video call. We showed them the pattern, the evidence, the medical records. We explained how Cassandra had systematically poisoned and gaslit multiple roommates across multiple institutions. The dean took it seriously, very seriously. They launched an investigation, interviewing Cassandra, searching her dorm room, confiscating her homemade products for analysis. They found substances that, while not illegal, were concerning in their concentration and combination. They found journals where Cassandra had documented her experiments with different compounds and their effects on human subjects, though she'd been clever enough not to name anyone specifically. They found enough to take action. Cassandra was expelled from Berkeley 2 weeks later. The official reason given was violations of student code of conduct and endangerment of other students. She tried to fight it, threatened to sue, but the university had expensive lawyers and a strong desire to avoid the publicity of having a student systematically poisoning her roommates. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought I was safe. I was wrong. The first sign that Cassandra wasn't going to just fade away came in the form of a dead bird on my doorstep. I'd finally gotten a new room assignment, a single this time, and I'd been starting to feel like maybe I could recover from everything that had happened. The bird was a crow, its neck broken, arranged carefully on my welcome mat with its wings spread. There was no note, no message, but I knew it was from her. Then my email was hacked, and someone sent offensive messages to all my professors from my account. It took days to sort out, and even though I convinced them I'd been hacked, the damage to my reputation was done. My bike tires were slashed. My laundry was bleached, ruining half my clothes. Someone signed me up for dozens of spam email lists and magazine subscriptions. Someone posted my phone number on Craigslist with an ad suggesting I was looking for explicit encounters, and I got disturbing calls and texts for weeks until I had to change my number. None of it could be definitively traced to Cassandra. She was careful, always careful, but I knew it was her. The others were experiencing similar harassment. Rachel's car was keyed. Amy's social media accounts were hacked and filled with offensive posts. Sophie received threatening letters with no return address. Priya had her identity stolen and credit cards opened in her name. Cassandra was punishing us for exposing her. We reported everything to the police, to campus security, to anyone who would listen. But without proof, there was nothing they could do. Cassandra had moved back home with her parents, 2 states away, and claimed she had nothing to do with any of the harassment. I started having nightmares about her. In my dreams, she'd appear in my room at night, standing over my bed with that serene smile, holding a cup of tea she'd made just for me. I became afraid to eat anything I hadn't prepared myself. I checked my drinks obsessively before consuming them. I installed locks on my dorm room door and a camera to record while I slept. It was exactly the life Cassandra had predicted for me, and she'd been right. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, unable to trust, unable to relax. The harassment continued sporadically throughout the rest of my freshman year. Just when I'd start to think maybe it was over, something else would happen. A small thing, a reminder that she was still out there, still watching, still capable of reaching me. My grades suffered, my mental health suffered. I started seeing a therapist on campus, and she diagnosed me with PTSD. I had panic attacks in public spaces. I couldn't sleep without medication. Cassandra had done exactly what she wanted to do. She'd destroyed me, just in a different way than originally planned. The summer after freshman year, I seriously considered not going back to Berkeley. Maybe I should transfer, start over somewhere Cassandra couldn't find me, but that felt like letting her win, and I was so tired of being a victim. I decided to fight back, but not in the way Cassandra would expect. I wasn't going to harass her or try to hurt her. I was going to expose her in a way she couldn't defend against. I started a blog. I called it Poisoned, one girl's story of surviving a psychopath roommate. I didn't use Cassandra's name, not wanting to open myself up to a defamation lawsuit, but I told the whole story in detail. The symptoms, the gaslighting, the systematic poisoning, the discovery, the evidence, the expulsion, and the ongoing harassment. I encouraged the other victims to share their stories too, and they did. Rachel, Amy, Sophie, and Priya all wrote guest posts detailing their experiences with the same unnamed person. The blog went viral. It started on Reddit, where someone shared it in a true crime community. Then it spread to Twitter, to Facebook, to TikTok. People were fascinated and horrified by the story. True crime podcasters reached out asking to cover it. Journalists wanted interviews. I said yes to all of it, always careful never to name Cassandra directly, but providing enough details that anyone who knew her would recognize the story. The pressure started building on her. People from her hometown started putting together the pieces, realizing the girl who'd been expelled from Berkeley was the same person in this viral story. Her social media was flooded with comments and messages from people calling her out, asking if the stories were true. She deleted all her accounts, but screenshots lived forever. People found her college application essays where she'd written about her passion for natural chemistry and her experiences helping sick friends feel better. They found old yearbook photos with quotes about her love of healing. Every piece of her carefully constructed image of herself as a helpful, caring person was recontextualized as evidence of her predatory behavior. She tried to fight back, creating anonymous accounts claiming the whole story was made up, that we were all lying. But the evidence was too strong, the pattern too clear. No one believed her. Then the lawsuits started. Rachel's parents sued Cassandra for medical expenses and emotional distress. They had the best case because Rachel's medical issues were the most documented and severe. Sophie's family joined in, then Amy's. I didn't sue because my family couldn't afford a lawyer, but I provided testimony and evidence for the other cases. The lawsuits dragged on for months, but eventually Cassandra's family settled. The amounts were undisclosed, but from what Rachel told me, they were significant, enough to cover medical bills and therapy costs with some left over. More importantly, the settlements were an admission, if not of guilt exactly, then of responsibility. Cassandra's life was effectively ruined. She couldn't go to college anywhere because her expulsion followed her. She couldn't get a job in any field related to chemistry or healthcare. She became a cautionary tale, an internet boogeyman, the psychopath roommate everyone feared getting assigned. I should have felt satisfied, vindicated, triumphant. Instead, I mostly felt tired. The harassment finally stopped after the settlements. Either Cassandra lost interest or her parents forced her to stop as part of the settlement terms. My sophomore year was quieter, calmer. I started to heal slowly, painfully, like recovering from a wound that had gone septic. I changed my major from pre-med to psychology. I wanted to understand people like Cassandra, what made them do the things they did. My therapist said it was a healthy way to reclaim power over my trauma. The blog stayed up, and I continued to update it occasionally with my recovery journey. It became a resource for other people who'd experienced similar situations, and I got messages regularly from people sharing their own stories of poisoning, gaslighting, and psychological abuse. I graduated from Berkeley in 4 years, on time despite everything. Rachel came to my graduation, and so did Amy and Sophie. Priya sent a video message. We'd formed a strange sisterhood, bonded by trauma but also by survival. At the graduation party my parents threw for me, my mom asked me if I regretted going to Berkeley, if I wished I'd gone somewhere else, and avoided the whole nightmare with Cassandra. I thought about it honestly before answering. No, I said finally. I mean, I wish it hadn't happened. I wish she hadn't targeted me, but going through it made me stronger. And stopping her, exposing her, preventing her from doing it to anyone else, that matters. That means something. I'm proud of you, my mom said, hugging me tightly. You took something terrible and found a way to make it meaningful. I never saw Cassandra again after she was expelled. I looked her up once, a few years after graduation, curious about what had become of her. She was working as a cashier at a grocery store in her hometown, living with her parents. Her social media presence was non-existent. She'd essentially disappeared from public life, unable to escape the reputation that followed her. Part of me felt bad for her, the tiniest part, the part that still wanted to see good in people even after everything. Her life had imploded, and while it was a consequence of her own actions, it was still a kind of tragedy. But mostly I felt relieved that she wasn't in a position to hurt anyone else, relieved that her story served as a warning, relieved that I'd survived and she hadn't won. I'm 30 now. The Cassandra incident was almost a decade ago, but I still think about it sometimes. I still have moments of paranoia about food and drinks from sources I don't control. I still have nightmares occasionally where I'm back in that dorm room, watching her stand over my bed in the dark. But I also have a career I love as a therapist specializing in trauma and abuse recovery. I have friends and relationships built on genuine trust and honesty. I have a life that's mine, that she couldn't take from me no matter how hard she tried. The blog is still up, though I don't update it much anymore. It's gotten over 10 million views over the years, and I still get messages from people it's helped. Some are from other victims of poisoning or Munchausen by proxy situations. Some are from people who recognized warning signs in their own relationships because of reading my story. Some are just from people who wanted to say thanks for sharing, for being brave enough to speak out. Every now and then I get a message that makes me wonder if it's from her. Anonymous, vague, slightly threatening. "You ruined my life," one said. "I'll never forgive you," said another. "You don't know what it's like to be me," said a third. I don't know if they're really from Cassandra or just from trolls who have read the story. I don't respond either way. There's nothing left to say to her. Sometimes I think about what she said that day in the dining hall, about being invisible, about wanting people to see her. I understand that feeling more than I'd like to admit. College can be lonely and overwhelming, and it's easy to feel lost in the crowd. But there are healthy ways to be seen and unhealthy ways. There are ways to build genuine connections and ways to manufacture false ones through manipulation and control. Cassandra chose the unhealthy way, and it cost her everything. I chose to survive, to speak out, to help others, and it gave me a life worth living. If there's a lesson in all of this, maybe it's that we all have choices in how we respond to our pain, our loneliness, our desperate need to be understood and valued. We can hurt others to make ourselves feel powerful, or we can be vulnerable and build real connections. One path leads to isolation and ruin, the other leads to healing and community. I know which one I choose. The funny thing is, I almost didn't apply to Berkeley. I was deciding between there and a small liberal arts college in Washington. I chose Berkeley because it was more prestigious, because it seemed like the kind of place where important things happened, where I could become someone significant. I became someone significant, just not in the way I expected, not because of my grades or my career or any traditional marker of success, but because I survived something terrible and used my experience to help others. There's a photo from freshman orientation that I still have somewhere. It's from that picnic where I first used Cassandra's sunscreen, where this whole nightmare began. Someone took a group photo of all the freshmen from my dorm, and we're all smiling, sunburned, and happy, full of excitement for the year ahead. I'm in the back row, grinning like an idiot, my face shiny with coconut oil and zinc oxide. Cassandra is a few people down from me, and if you look closely at her expression, you can see it's different from everyone else's. While we're all looking at the camera with genuine joy, her smile is calculated, controlled. Her eyes aren't crinkled with laughter like ours. They're assessing, measuring, choosing. I wonder if she'd already picked me as her target by then, if she'd already decided I was the right combination of trusting and vulnerable, if she'd already started planning how she'd make me sick, make me dependent, make me hers. Or maybe I'm reading too much into it. Maybe she was just a girl at a picnic, not yet sure who she'd choose to torment. Either way, that photo represents the last moment of my innocence, the last time I could move through the world without suspicion and fear. I don't look at it often. My therapist asked me once what I'd say to Cassandra if I could say anything without consequence. I thought about it for weeks. Finally, I decided I'd ask her if it was worth it, if the temporary feeling of power and control she got from poisoning me was worth losing everything, if making me sick satisfied whatever emptiness was inside her, if she ever felt remorse. But I know I'd never get an honest answer. People like Cassandra don't do self-reflection or genuine remorse. They just move on to the next victim, or if they can't, they stew in resentment about being caught. The real question isn't what I'd say to her. It's what I'd say to myself, to that naive freshman girl slathering herself in homemade sunscreen and trusting too easily. I'd tell her to trust her instincts. When something feels wrong, even if you can't articulate why, pay attention to that feeling. When someone seems too helpful, too invested in your well-being too quickly, ask yourself why. When you start feeling sick and only one person can make you better, consider that they might be causing the sickness in the first place. I tell her that not everyone who offers help is actually helping, that sometimes the person who seems most concerned for your welfare is the one doing you the most harm. I tell her to document everything, trust her friends, and never drink anything she didn't see prepared from start to finish. But mostly I'd tell her that she's going to survive this, that it's going to be awful and traumatic and life-changing, but that she'll come out the other side stronger and wiser, that her story will help people, that she won't let this break her. I tell her what I now know to be true, that surviving Cassandra will be the hardest thing she ever does, but also the most important. Because here's the thing about trauma, it doesn't just hurt you, it teaches you, it shows you what you're capable of enduring, it reveals your strength in ways that comfort and safety never could. I'm not grateful for what Cassandra did to me. I wouldn't wish that experience on anyone. The fear, the sickness, the gaslighting, the feeling of going insane while someone smiles and offers you tea that's making you worse. But I am grateful for who I became in response to it, for the courage I found to investigate and expose her, for the connections I made with other survivors, for the career I built helping people heal from similar experiences. Cassandra tried to poison me, to break me, to make me dependent and small. Instead, she made me strong. And that's the best revenge of all. Living well, living fully, living freely without fear of her or anyone like her, building a life she can't touch, helping people she can't hurt, being someone she could never be. She's probably still out there somewhere, living her diminished life, blaming everyone but herself for how things turned out. Maybe she still makes her homemade products, though I hope she doesn't have access to anyone vulnerable enough to use them on. Maybe she's learned and changed, though I doubt it. People like that rarely do. Or maybe she's planning her comeback, waiting for enough time to pass that people forget, that she can start fresh somewhere new. I hope not. I hope the internet never forgets. I hope my blog stays up forever as a warning. But if she does manage to find another victim, I hope that person is smart enough to document everything, brave enough to speak up, and lucky enough to find allies who believe them. I hope they survive her too. Because that's what this is really about, not revenge or punishment or justice, though those things matter. It's about survival. It's about refusing to let someone else's sickness become your death sentence. It's about saying no to the poisoned tea, even when the person offering it seems like they're trying to help. It's about trusting yourself more than you trust someone else's performance of concern. It's about staying alive, staying sane, staying yourself, no matter how hard someone tries to destroy you. I survived, Cassandra. And if you're reading this because something similar is happening to you, you can survive too. Document everything, trust your instincts, find your people, tell your story. And whatever you do, don't drink the tea. That's what I wish someone had told me before I slathered myself in homemade sunscreen at freshman orientation and set myself on a collision course with a psychopath. But maybe I needed to learn it the hard way. Maybe we all do. All I know is that I'm still here, still fighting, still helping others fight. And Cassandra can never take that away from me, no matter how hard she tries. The end of this story isn't my destruction like she planned. It's my survival, my strength, my refusal to be silenced. That's my revenge. That's my victory. And it's enough.